Good morning, good evening, good night, whatever time of day or night it is, Project Kashmir's listener. I've got a very special guest, Kai Parsons, who's in Cape Town, South Africa at the moment, and we're going to have a fascinating conversation. Kai, for people who don't know you, could you introduce yourself in the same way that you would if you bumped into someone at a party or a social event and they said, "Hi, who are you and what do you do?"
So I'm currently in high school, but a bit kind of more than that, I'm an entrepreneur. So I've started 4 businesses over the last couple of years, and entrepreneurship's really become like a major part in me. My latest business is a social enterprise that looks at gas safety in rural areas, and that's kind of me in a nutshell at the moment.
Okay, great. Now the reason I came across you was that you were speaking at TEDxYouth at Cape Town, I suppose 3 weeks ago now. Would you be able to explain what you were speaking about? What was the main message you wanted to get across? Because this is actually why I invited you on the show. I then discovered more interesting things about you. But let's kick off with why you were on. What idea were you talking about on the TEDx Cape Town Youth at Cape Town stage?
So the idea that I was kind of promoting was the necessity for entrepreneurship in school. So it's been something that I've noticed, especially here in South Africa. I'm not sure if it's different, obviously different in different countries all over the world, it's different. But I think generally speaking from some of my friends internationally, school doesn't really promote entrepreneurship very well, at least in most schools. And I think that that's a major problem. So we have a lot of schools have these business classes and you learn about different, you learn some of the skills you need to run a business, but they never really promote the entrepreneurial mindset. So you can have some of these skills, but you never really know how to use them into creating your own business. And to me, that's kind of what I talked about, like the necessity for having entrepreneurship in school as a subject or teaching entrepreneurship in different subjects. And also entrepreneurship is such a major key to the kind of the future, to improving the future, because entrepreneurs, they make businesses, but more than that, entrepreneurs go out and solve problems. So every business tackles a certain problem, and that's essentially what entrepreneurs are. They're problem solvers, and then they make money as an incentive to that. So if we can kind of make more entrepreneurs, then we can solve more problems. And that's kind of this brief synopsis of my talk.
Great. Okay, and obviously, I mean, as a TEDx curator myself, I'm very used to grilling speakers a bit about. So, why did that idea matter to you? Obviously, you're 17 years old at the moment. I think, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So obviously, when we're talking to people, they're somewhat older, and we ask about where they got with their entrepreneurial journey, and in some cases, it started after the age at which you are now. But at what stage in your life did you come across the concept of entrepreneurship and setting up a business, and why did that appeal to you?
It's probably around about when I was 14. So about 3 years ago is when entrepreneurship really kind of came. Probably before that I hadn't really formalized a business, but I always kind of had the idea of going into business, creating my business. But until I was 14, I hadn't really kind of solidified that idea. And then when I was 14, I'm not sure, I can't really pinpoint a specific reason as to why I got interested in it, but I think my first business was actually a gaming business. And I was thinking, okay, so I'm doing this thing, how can I make money of this? And that was my first thing. So making this little gaming business. At the time, I was running a commercial Minecraft service. This was back. I was combining my interests with something. Okay, how can I turn my interest into making money at the same time? So that was my first business. I did that for a while, and then on from there, I kind of had a bit more of a business approach to things. And I thought, okay, so I really enjoyed doing, even though I did this more as a kind of just part of my interest more than the actual business side of things. After probably when I was about 15, I decided that entrepreneurship is really something that I want to get involved in. And from there, I decided, okay, how can I make a business or start learning more about entrepreneurship in a way that's going to make sure that I can, in the future, I can be successful in my entrepreneurial ventures. So that's kind of, it's hard to pinpoint an exact reason for it.
I want to take you back a bit further. You said you were doing something with Minecraft even previously, which sounds as if in a way, your business was already up and running, in a sense. What were you doing on Minecraft, and how old were you when you make money out of Minecraft?
So Minecraft was my life for my early teenage years. From age of 12 onwards, I was playing a lot of Minecraft, and then I think I was when I was about 12, going on 13. Me and my friend, we were making this Minecraft servers for other players to play on. We decided, okay, well, we first made the server for free, and we were just having fun with it, and then we started thinking more about it and thinking, okay, how can we make money with this? So from there, we started. I'm not sure if you've played Minecraft before or know about it, but essentially what we started to do,
I certainly know about it. There was a time in my life when I probably spent too much time playing games, and it's I've got perhaps a kind of relationship with video games that ex-alcoholics have with alcohol, that you're aware it's there and you think it would be very nice, but you know that if you dip your finger in and you take a little taste, you might hook you. So in a way, I've got a sort of psychological barrier. So I certainly know what Minecraft is, but I'm not experienced in it. But so you kicked off doing it for fun, and then you realized that this could be a way of making money. Is that right?
Yeah, that's precisely it. And then we started it for fun, and then we decided, okay, let's try and make some money off this. And then we built a website for it, and we started selling in-game items and stuff in the game for real money.
Okay, and what sort of scale? What sort of scale was that at?
So I mean, that was a relatively small scale. We probably were making roughly about $10 to $20 per day. But we did have to close it after a while. It didn't last for too long. It lasted for about a month, and then we had to close it down, unfortunately.
Sorry, $10 to $20 a day in South Africa, that's
it's quite a bit. So it's about 200 rand at the time.
Yeah, $300 to $400 a month, right?
Yeah, so it's quite a bit. So the problem what we had is we had a lot of initial peak interest. So we released it and we started promoting it. And there's some websites that you can use specifically to promote your Minecraft server. And then we were making money quite a lot initially. But what kind of happened is as time progressed, is we'd be dropping people on the server, etc. And then we got to a stage when there just wasn't enough people on the server anymore to keep it operational.
But presumably, can you give a bit of your social context? I mean, are you in a sort of environment where that age have that sort of money, or if they do have, make you feel different to be making it yourself compared to being given it for wealthy parents? Because I actually know nothing about your background other than you're at one of the better a school with quite a good reputation. Does that mean the other kids there are very wealthy and you're fabulously wealthy already? So this was just extra pocket money, or?
Oh, no, definitely not. So I do go to quite a wealthy school, but I'm there on a kind of a partial scholarship. Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, the people who were joining our thing, joining the Minecraft server and stuff, they were joining online, but they weren't actually really from my own social groups. They were international players from all over. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't really very much of that. And it was definitely nice money to have, but part of the issue with the Minecraft server is we had a lot of time when we were developing the Minecraft server. So that time we were paying hosting fees and stuff for years before we actually ended up releasing the project. And those fees that had already incurred quite a lot of money that we had to obviously try and pay back. So when we were making money off the server, we weren't making any profit because we had already run quite a bit of a loss previously by hosting the server for quite a long time. Because we suffered a little bit from we weren't very quick to release it. So we just kept on developing it, improving it until we took a really long time for us to actually end up releasing the project.
So the guy who set up Fortune, who gave a TED talk many years ago, or about 10 years ago, and one person asked him on stage was, what did your parents think about the fact you're running the sort of dark side of the internet? And he made a comment which I thought was quite funny. He said, I don't think a significant side income out of it, or was it like a little bit of a sort of private thing?
Sorry, Richard, I missed that there. Can you just repeat that?
Yeah, sure. Sure. I was saying that Chris Poole, who set up 4chan, when Chris Anderson asked him in his TED Talk / interview about what the fact he was running the sort of dark side of the internet out of his bedroom, he said, "I don't think mum and dad knew what I was doing." Can you give a bit of information about your family context? Were your parents and your siblings that you were making quite significant income out of the internet, or was it rather a sort of side private project?
So I mean, my parents definitely knew about it, but it was more kind of a side private project. They weren't really super involved in it or anything, but they were aware of it and they just support me in it.
Yeah, and are they entrepreneurs themselves in terms of your sort of role models? So sometimes people who go into business quite young say, "Yeah, we grew up; it was all around us when we were kids." Because apologies, Project Kazimierz. Listen, I think we may have an interruption of service here. I'm just talking again. I'm repeating the question, Kai. We can edit this out later. I was asking if your family had lots of role models. Was this somewhat going against the family tradition?
So this was actually going somewhat against the family tradition. My mom's a doctor, my dad's a pharmacist, so not really any entrepreneurial kind of family at home. So it is kind of against the family tradition.
Mm-hmm. And did that mean that they sort of felt that you'd be better doing schoolwork and studying rather than this, or did they see that this was a good way to channel your energy into things that were, I mean, what were broadly supported, or were you pretty much on your own?
Well, I think I think that original project there with Minecraft, maybe moving away from that a bit, because I was still kind of in early high school, going into high school then, so school wasn't really as much of an importance thing. But with my more recent projects, my parents have kind of given the focus more to the entrepreneurship side rather than school. Mm-hmm. They do obviously still have certain expectations with me in terms of schooling, that I reach certain benchmarks or marks. But I have been managing to do that quite effectively with the entrepreneurial kind of ventures on the side.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what about, because I think the reason you gave the TED talk, the TEDx CapeTown Youth at CapeTown talk, was because clearly you felt there was support for entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial sort of what's the word? Did that apply to your school? And did your school sort of know about what you were doing, and were they either neutral for it, against it? I mean, how or was it really just like not part of the curriculum as far as what would happen if you hadn't taken your own initiative?
So it isn't really part of the curriculum at all. So obviously in my school, our school just follows the curriculum. And in my school, we have kind of a intermediary phase from grade 8 and 9, in which there are actually some subjects there that kind of promotes entrepreneurship to a certain extent. But in grade 10 to 12, which is the kind of your more important fundamental years, the syllabus just doesn't allow for any entrepreneurial kind of activities in there, or doesn't promote any entrepreneurial activities. So my school obviously hasn't been going into that, but it's not on the syllabus either. Yeah.
Okay, so that's, and here in Poland, although in the sort of the lower secondary, that's sort of, I'd say the sort of 12 to 15, there's a lot of educational reform going on in Poland, so the system changes. But in what was the gymnasium stage, the sort of 12 to 15-year-old stage, they had entrepreneurship. But I looked at some of the textbooks, and it was things like how to fill in a tax declaration, which, let's say, in favor of tax, and I think we need to have a state, but it's not the most encouraging, inspiring aspect of entrepreneurship for almost everyone. So it existed by label, but not in terms of mindset. Also, do you have like one thing that I've been involved in both at school and university level is trying to mobilize alumni networks, in the sense that, if you take a population of alumni, say 1,000 alumni of your high school, a certain percentage of them inevitably will be in business. So in terms of role model transfer of know hazard events, or places to get internships, or even investors in sort of school entrepreneurship projects, is a potential resource which here in Europe anyway is much underexploited. Do you have a strong alumni network, and is that somewhere you looked for potential sort of inspiration, or might you do in the future?
I think definitely in the future that's something that I want to look into. It's definitely the same here in South Africa. It's not really very utilized. Networking is something I realized recently that it's really, really fundamental to the people who you know and who you can communicate with. But it's definitely an underutilized resource here as well.
Yeah, and it's something that maybe after the podcast I could share a bit of information. Interesting. What happened was in the UK, I went to this was many years ago, quite an exclusive private school called Winchester College, which is up there, so 600 years old, famous ones. And about 10 years ago, through the alumni, there is an alumni association which typically gets together for sporting occasions. It's social sort of white tie, black tie dinners in clubs in London. It's not very much not a sort of business focused thing. They set up some subgroups, and there was a vague initiative to have a sort of business orientated one, and they invited. It was held in the head offices of a company called Innocent, which makes the smoothie drinks, and which had been sold to Coca-Cola for several £100 million. So it was, and this happened to be one of the founders was an alumni of the school. So it was in their headquarters, and but the focus was on fundraising for people who already had businesses or business ideas. So it's like a Dragon's Den. And we're saying, it's a shame we're not doing anything for current boys in the school, because in my entire time at that school, I remember there were 2 business orientated events in 5 years, and one of my motivations to do things towards supporting school entrepreneurship has been, this was something that would have been great for me, because I remember all the entrepreneurship activities of my schooling, which is both of them. That's not enough. Yeah. So we did, and then we heard that a rival school called Eton had set up something called Etonpreneurs, and the 3 people who founded that had met each other as a result of having gone to American business schools, and they only later realized they'd been to the same high school, that it was Stanford, a business school in Stanford, connected them, and they thought, isn't it ridiculous that it takes an American business school to bring us into contact rather than the place that we spent 5 years together at, not at the same time. And that led to me founding something called Wintrepreneurs, which, interestingly, we had a few meetings in London where the majority of alumni end up being a UK. But I tried to organize a meeting on the school premises, because I'd been invited back to give a talk at a school organized event, and I was told to cease and desist by the head of safeguarding. They said it was unacceptable to have an uncontrolled alumni-led event on the premises. So the school stopped me or requested me not to go ahead with the meeting, which gave quite an interesting context of how the school authorities at Winchester College viewed it. But having had that slightly negative experience, I did something similar for Cambridge University, and now I've founded something called CAM Entrepreneurs, which has now had meetings in Warsaw, London, Edinburgh, Sydney, Australia, New York, and wherever we use the sort of TED to TEDx model, that I won't launch a chapter of CAM Entrepreneurs unless there's an alumni in that city who's ready to take a lead, because obviously being here in Poland, I can't lead a global movement in my spare time unless I've got support. And I certainly think that if you're looking for places to get support, having some kind of survey of can you describe the school you're at? So I've been talking for a long time, because you said your school's quite well known, and the person who told me about you, Jill Rosa, who was a TEDx CapeTown speaker, was talking about your school quite reverently, just as if it was like one of the most established schools in Cape Town. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our school is definitely quite well established. It's kind of an somewhat alternative schooling model. There's a big focus on creativity and the arts in our school.
Can you watch
So
school?
Seed House. So I go to Seed House.
Okay.
Seed House in Cape Town. So there's definitely a really big focus on creativity and promoting individualism at our school, which is really nice. And there's a lot of focus on the arts and yeah.
Okay, and what age group does it address? I'm just putting a link up on the screen so people can see. What sort of age group?
So it's focused from grade 4, so it's probably starting at around age 10 all the way to matric, so about 10 to 18 is the age group.
Okay, and when it's on the website, it is small. So how many pupils does that mean in the South African context?
So that's about 450 students in total.
Yeah, and I was telling you before we jumped on the podcast that there's a project here in Krakow in a school called the Technikum Łączności, which means the technical communications college, which has 1,200 students or pupils, and there's a project there called SEED, which is something like student entrepreneurship daily. It's got some, I can't remember what the other E stands for, but they've been inviting people in to give talks from the local startup community, and that their developers have a machine learning and artificial intelligence club. Do you cooperate with a technical profile?
Sorry, I missed you there, Richard.
So I was saying, describe the SEED initiative in the technical high school here in Krakow, led by a young man called Daniel and Aga, and a girl called Aga. And are you interested potentially in cooperating with other youth entrepreneurship initiatives around the world?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be fantastic. I really think about networking is incredibly important, and internationally talking to other people is amazing.
I think a bit of feedback on that. Sometimes people go to different events saying they're keen on networking. It's all, and a TEDx Embassy School Krakow speaker, Hugo Dudka, who also organized TEDx Youth at Warsaw. He asked me for introductions when he was going to Silicon Valley, and I set up a meeting for him. When he got to the meeting, he met a guy called his company. He set up a dating site in the early days of the internet, which he sold for $50 million. So I think he took more than $10 million home as a result of that exit. And so Hugo from Poland, from Warsaw, got to meet Will Bunker, and when he got to the meeting, Hugo said, "So, can you introduce me to some famous Silicon Valley people?" And he wrote a blog post about it for my blog as a guest post, because basically Will said, "Well, I can't set up meetings unless I know what the purpose is." And is when you're approaching networking, is, well, if I'm going to meet someone, or either what do I want or what can I offer, that simply saying, "Hey, can I talk to you?" is unless you got here. It's just a talk. So I'll certainly make the introductions, but it'd be a really good idea to think what could be the outcome. Maybe you could talk about your talk that you gave at TEDx CapeTown, Youth at CapeTown. Maybe there's some business project, but it's always a good idea to think about the purpose of networking. What you said you've come to realize how important it is. What do you think the main benefits for networking can be for you?
I think support, knowledge is really kind of from a high schooler's perspective. Obviously, I don't have a lot of experience in the entrepreneurial world yet, as much as I'm trying to get it started with it early. But there's a lot of people who have a lot more knowledge in dealing with businesses, creating businesses, and also in other fields like technology. Like my latest project, we're going to have to be consulting some people on the tech we're using in our product. So it's really just, I think the biggest kind of benefit for me is knowledge, being able to share other people's knowledge. Okay,
certainly. I think one of the great concepts that comes out of, if you follow the sort of entrepreneurial genesis, the idea that you never stop learning, that there isn't like a time in your life where you're being educated and a time in your life when you stop, that you basically can carry on learning till the day till the day you die, and sort of being open to new knowledge, and also what's true now, in 9 or in 10 years' time, the truths of your childhood. You know, South Africa obviously went through a sort of political revolution, and so what was true 30 years ago might absolutely not be true now, for example. So that's a very good point. Can you actually talk about your project, because it's actually something that's very, very relevant to Krakow. You gave me a page called Error Alert. Sorry, I've made a mistake in this thing on screen. But tell us about Error Alert.
So Error Alert is something we founded this year. Me and my best friend, we founded this project. And basically what we're looking at addressing the dangerously high levels of carbon monoxide in informal settlements. So some context around that is, in a lot of like really low income areas, especially in different parts of South Africa and some parts of Asia, people have very small houses and stuff. And what they do, they burn fossil fuels as forms of lighting, for cooking, heating, etc. And what actually happens when you're burning those fossil fuels is it releases a lot of gases. And one of the big gases that's released then is carbon monoxide, and this is completely odorless. So you're not really aware that it's there, but it can build up in very high concentrations. And then what happens when you have prolonged exposure to that, you actually end up damaging your lungs, and you can pick up diseases such as COPD. And every year that leads to thousands of deaths. So what we're kind of doing to counter that is we've made a product that measures carbon monoxide levels. It's a cheap product, so we're trying to roll out. And this product then measures carbon monoxide levels in a room continuously, and then it alerts people when there's dangerously high levels in the room, or when prolonged exposures are occurring. Yeah,
because I don't know if you're aware about the air quality issues here in Central Europe. I put the Air Alert page up. So your focus is carbon monoxide. Here in Krakow, we have big problems with smog, and there's a local startup called Aptly, which is selling air pollution monitors which capture a range of different data. Carbon monoxide, because that's Africa, or do you want to?
You just broke up there for a bit.
Okay, I'll come back. So I was asking, do you focus on just carbon monoxide, or do you have sort of other things you want to monitor as well?
So definitely we are focusing on other things as well. Our current phase is we've got some prototypes, and this December we're going to be doing some major prototyping, and we're going to be prototyping a few different gas sensors. We're also still kind of researching of which gases are more prevalent for us to measure. A big part of our sensors is that they're quite low cost, obviously because of the target market for them. So we're trying to target kind of more specific gases, maybe 1 or 2 gases, instead of measuring a wide array in a single product. But we are still doing research into which gas is more relevant to actually measure.
Mm-hmm. Because I was mentioning that here in Krakow and in Central Europe, we've got big problems with air quality, particularly smog, and so there's a local startup which has attracted a lot of attention called Aptly, and their monitors are streaming data onto the internet. I'll send you. I'll actually put a link up to Aptly on the site, because I mean it's a big world. The fact that there's a company in Krakow that's making air pollution monitors that stream data onto the internet probably doesn't threaten your livelihood, does it? You know, there's a room for more than one company in this sector globally, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But would you be interested in an introduction to the people at Aptly? Just like talk to their R&D people about what you're doing, and so maybe share ideas and resources. Would that be valuable for you?
Yeah, definitely. That would be extremely valuable.
Okay, because there are certainly people from Aptly who there are small, different sort of environmentally orientated events where they present, and quite where it would lead, I don't know, but maybe they could look at your product and you could look at theirs, and there might be usually there can be two-way learnings. And but do you see this as a profit business or more like a pro-environment social project? What are your motivations on that one?
So it's definitely more a kind of a social project. We are running this more as a social enterprise, more than kind of just focusing purely on the profits. we are still kind of looking at some of the more exact details of how we're going to be marketing. As I said, we're still in kind of our prototyping phase at the moment. But yeah, so mostly heading towards the social side.
And I think when I was doing the background research, you've also got a kind of online web development shop. Are you doing sort of coding work commercially just to make money? How much of your time are you doing that at all? And if you are, how much of your time are you spending on just like coding for money and sort of like the old school, old fashioned sort of, money for work is a fairly well established business model, which if you can code is a good way to make money. How much time are you spending doing that, and what's the name of that business?
So I've been doing that. That's kind of been the most of my time. I've been doing that for the past probably year and a half now. The name of the business is SI Silicon Development. I can send you a link on Facebook Messenger if you want.
Yeah, do that. I'll put that on the screen, because there might be someone somewhere listening who'll give you a project, and if you do, and they'll send you tons of money, there's no downside. Sidedev.co. Here, it's coming up in a moment. I'll put that on the screen. So can you describe the sort of projects that business does?
Yeah, so our main kind of focus is web development. So we've kind of, most of our websites have been WordPress-based websites, but we have also done some more advanced websites. Looking at, a while ago, we did a project for a school that wanted to track their student certificates to prove that their student certificates were valid. So we made a system for them to track and verify, so public people could verify student certificates that they actually achieved that. And something more recent that we're kind of bridging into is making web chatbots. Just a little note on the website, it's currently under renovation, but it is mostly there. So that's kind of our web development and web bots. As you can see, we will have a web bot there up for demo pretty soon. Yeah.
I think I found a spelling mistake on your website.
Sorry, yeah, it is under development. We should probably actually just put up the coming soon page again.
Yeah, but what's your route to market? How do you market that, or do people find you, or are you listed in sort of freelancer type portals? What's your way of getting business?
So normally our approach to that is actually just to approach people. So what we'll do, we'll find a place that either they don't have a website, or their website is in serious need of a kind of a makeover, or they're not marketing online as well as they could be. And then we'll normally just send them an email or go in and talk to them. So kind of a direct approach to marketing.
And so that presumably means you're pretty much focused on the local Cape Town area, or do you sell to people in different cities and talk to them on Skype, or do you focus on local?
So I've also found out with my friend. He lives in England, so we are kind of doing some more international clients. I think our last person was an organization from England. So we do some. It is more kind of the local business, but we do also reach out on our own networks as well for a more international sense.
Yeah, that's quite interesting that you're even at the age of 7 deliver globally. I mean, is this friend someone who moved to England? And because to develop a sort of trusting, collaborative relationship with someone in a different continent isn't the easiest thing. Did you know each other beforehand, or did you find each other online? How did that work?
Oh no, he used to live here in South Africa. Was friends with him for quite some time, and then he moved over to England. Yeah.
And I think Cape Town research cost level seems quite similar to Poland, that it's a sort of middling rather than it's a kind of rich country by sort of British standards. So it must be quite an advantage if you can sell in the UK, because presumably South African rates are quite competitive with UK. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's really the UK clients are definitely kind of one of our people we want to target mostly for the exchange rate. So I think it's about 18 Rand for a British pound at the moment. So it brings in a lot more money than targeting local South African businesses.
This will be very, very familiar to our technical audience here in Poland. Many of the developers are working on projects with clients in Germany, UK, America, Scandinavia, simply because 1,000 euros goes further here, or £1,000 goes further here than it does in Germany or Scandinavia or the UK or America for that matter. So that can be quite an opportunity. And just sort of looking forward, what do you have like a clear vision of what sort of businesses you'd like to be doing in the future? I'm kind of making an assumption that, given everything I've heard about you so far, that you're probably going to stay in the sort of self-employed entrepreneurial path. But that could be wrong. Do you think you might work for someone else before you start your own business in the future, or haven't you decided yet?
I haven't really decided yet. I definitely know that in the future, at some point in the future, I would like to start my own business, probably focused around tech. I do still plan to actually attend university after school for studying computer science, and then possibly after that, maybe going to another business to go and get some experience to work there. I definitely think that's important. I don't think I'll neglect going to find a job at another company, because there could definitely be some valuable experience there. But at some point in the future, I would like to, obviously, if I do go to work for another company, leave that company and go create my own business. Alternatively, I may just find myself starting a business, maybe even in university or after university.
I know I had a previous podcast with who founded a company called Encipher and many other businesses. He's a general partner of Amadeus Capital, which means that A, he put money in, and B, it's a very high profile British investment venture capital and seed investment fund. He said that, in a way, you have to be opportunity ready. You never know when the opportunity will come, but you have to sort of have your antenna switched onto that. And I think that if you've got that attitude, it could be in 3 days, 3 months, 3 years that the right thing comes along, and then you can approach that with a lot of experience. So that's interesting. And do you think you'll stay in South Africa, or might you come to Europe and come and give? Look at
that. So I think my current plan is to study in South Africa for first year at least. But then after first year, I may come over to somewhere in Europe, or most likely probably go into the UK and study there after first year.
Okay. And if any of our they gain from listening to you, obviously I imagine your TEDx Youth at Cape Town talk isn't yet online, but what would be the most important things you'd say to a young person? Because, like, in a sense, to the older people, to the people devising curriculums, running high schools, obviously, I think the message is fairly clear. Make it more friendly towards entrepreneurship, and I'm sure there's a number of fairly obvious steps. In terms of young people who are with their lives, where would you advise them to go to get inspired towards entrepreneurship? Because maybe the school isn't that supportive, so they've got to make their own tracks rather than rely on other people. What advice would you give to a 15-year-old listening to you who is interested in entrepreneurship but doesn't know what to do?
So I think definitely my biggest kind of piece of advice is get out there and try and start a business. I think that's the most incredible experience, the best. You can try and do some research and stuff, and I actually have a website I'll send you online on Facebook Messenger now that you can go to learn a bit or access some entrepreneurial resources that can guide you. But I think the biggest thing really is to try and get out there and try and start your own business. Maybe from starting off, try and use your own interests so that you really kind of enjoy your business, enjoy what you're doing. But I think that's the best piece of advice I can give, is try and start your own small business. And you can start learning from there. But I will send you the link to the website, a website that has a kind of a list of different resources.
Okay, that'll be very useful. Just wait, that hasn't quite.
I'm just trying to get it up.
But what about inspiration? Do you listen to podcasts or watch YouTube channels or other particular individuals or authors or speakers that you you go to sort of like motivate you and inspire you, or is the link you're about to send me exactly that, a list of inspirational resources?
So yeah, this link does actually have the link does have a collaboration of some podcasts and stuff that you can actually go to that do have some really inspirational people speaking on them, and some videos as well. Yeah, so that's
okay. So that's the South African Learn Entrepreneurship, and are you in touch with that? So I'll send it. So that's a South African site, and probably as in the show notes for this podcast, it won't go online for a few weeks yet, but in the show notes for sure. Sorry, the site is coming up slowly. I'll put it on the screen in a moment. It's called learnentrepreneurship.co.za, and of course, and that's a South African site. But the world is global now, so that's local to South Africa. It is coming up slowly.
So the site over here, it is a South African site, but all the kind of resources here are applicable everywhere. I think there's actually only one resource here or link here that is South African only. Otherwise, most of the resources are either global or easily kind of interpretable in a global sense.
Okay, and I see it's your email address at the bottom. So you actually created this.
So I did actually create this website, and it is growing. I will be adding quite a few more things to this, and also adding a kind of more guided experience to this at some point soon.
Okay, great. Well, actually that's something that I think in terms of potential collaboration, given my involvement here in the startup community and the promotion of entrepreneurship, maybe there's some way I can help with that, or some of my contacts can help with that. I was talking to people in Stellenbosch Business School, and the wood shop store or university, business school, and high school level part-time here. Okay, so that's fantastic. So your number one advice to a young person is actually start your own business, do something. And I think that there's no question that you learn a lot by doing that. And even if it's as simple as making Christmas presents for people, cleaning, doing cutting doing their garden, whatever, it's you can learn a lot. And even if it's not that profitable, at least you get a sense. But you've talked about your future. Is there anything else you want to share with the Project Kashmir's listeners, or if anyone's coming to South Africa, should they get in touch with you? How can people help you? How can you help people listening?
So in terms of how I can help people listening, I think for youth, so I really want to kind of like emphasize that getting started thing just once more. I think that's really kind of an incredible thing. And even if you're not in the youth and you're just kind of considering trying entrepreneurship, there's no harm in starting like a side business of sorts, just to try and learn more about it. In terms of people helping me, so I'd definitely be more than happy to meet with, or really it would be a fantastic opportunity to meet with anyone interested in entrepreneurship, or anyone with knowledge, experience in kind of the field of business that I'm looking into, so the tech and social enterprise kind of model. But yeah.
Those are two calls for action. I'll put in the show notes for this show, we'll put up links to the various things that have been going on in the comments on the screen here, so that people can follow up. When your TEDx Youth at Cape Town talk goes online, send me a note and I will update the show notes. The show that Project Kashmir's is a WordPress website, so it's easy for me to update the show notes. And if anyone listening is interested in youth entrepreneurship here in Krakow, I can put you in touch with the projects that I'm supporting or going on here in Poland. If you're interested in global initiatives, I can try and support you via the CAM Entrepreneurs Network. And I think that there's no better contact than Kai Parsons in Cape Town, South Africa, if someone's interested in the southern end of the African continent, or indeed in the UK where you've got a business partner. So once again, thanks very much for your time, and thank you very much, Project Kashmir's listeners.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity to be